Hello and welcome to The Scaling Game. This is a podcast where we discuss how we've helped direct response advertisers find and fix what's preventing them from scaling their business. I'm Sammy Afrin. I'm the head of creative strategy at Deciphered. Alongside me in this episode and every other, you will see John Belcher. He's the founder of Deciphered. In today's episode, we're going to discuss how we helped an e-commerce gadget company decrease their CPAs by 50%, allowing them to scale their spend to $37,000 a day on both Facebook and Google, which ultimately helped them acquire thousands of new customers a month. This is a good one. I think they're all good. But before we jump into it, I need to remind you to please take 15 minutes or so to watch the first episode of The Scaling Game. It is a foundational episode. It lays out the rules of the game, the definition of scale we work from, things like that will just help ensure that we're all on the same page as we jump into this case study and every other. So enough of me yapping here. I'll see you in this case study. Hi, John. We are talking e-commerce. We are talking Gadget?
Yeah, I think that's the best way to put it. This was a widget,
trying to
right?
keep it short and simple,
Yeah. I think that's really important when we talk about e-com. There's distinctions for the types of things that you're selling, the price points, etc. So, best way to call this a gadget, a widget. It's a product that's easy to buy and use by the consumer. There's no health benefits or this or that behind it. It's just very much like
it does this thing. It's for this thing. You use it for this thing. Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
Okay, so this. Do we have a price point? Do we recall? Does it matter? I don't know that it matters, but it was like less than $100.
Yeah, it was less than $100, which I think that's kind of for us been an important level. Is like $100, maybe $150, $175, and then you kind of have like above $250. That changes conversion rates a little bit, but this was less than $100.
Okay, so how did you end up here? I'm assuming you met someone somewhere and they said, hey, we have a media buying problem.
Yeah, this was one that
I knew it.
Once again, YouTube for me was still what I was known for, right? This is the YouTube background days. And so I'd given a presentation at an event talking about Google advertising YouTube. One of the co-founders of this company came up to me and said, hey, we have a ton of people that have success on Facebook, but we need some, we want to try and get YouTube rolling. Would you be willing to work with us? And so this was something for me that when we talk about media buying problem, they were viewing it more as an opportunity. But as I started to get to know the situation better, the Facebook performance had really dropped off. And the company was needing a lot more sales in order to kind of keep their hopes alive. And so when we got into this, it was like, hey, can you help us with YouTube? And then it was like, but really, we just want more sales overall. What can we do across the board here? That was ultimately how this turned out.
Yep. So let's kind of jump into the numbers of it. This was, again, less than $100. When we start our process of looking at anybody's funnel issues, okay, we've looked at the things, we've looked at media buying. There's no obvious issues, right? We've wiped that off the board as being what's contributing to the major issues in this particular funnel. Let's now break out the funnel into all of its steps, whatever that may look like. You're looking at it here. We call this our scaling equation. The first step in, I guess, breaking down your scaling equation after putting your funnel into the different steps is to look for a where, right? Where is the funnel broken? By this point, you had a little more time under your belt. So were you working from benchmarks? Was this a gut feeling? How did you kind of come to being able to identify where we needed to focus?
Yeah, so the caveat with this situation is this was the first time that I'd run Ecomm. And so as I entered the situation, the founder approached me. I was like, I've never run Ecomm. I've done this with other clients, other verticals, but I was like, I've proven now multiple times that this process works. I believe it will work here. My biggest thing is I don't know exactly what I'm looking for. I don't have here's a benchmark for this particular thing. And so this was kind of the origin of starting to look at modeling. We weren't using mathematical models, but it was really that thing of saying, what's going to really make the biggest impact? Where are we? I'd hate to say gut, but it still was a little gut at this point, is like, what's our biggest friction point, our leak? And so that's kind of as we work through this, I'll kind of walk you through what this looked like. But the steps in the sales process, so we had an ad that ran to an advertorial, so a pre-selling page that then clicked over to a sales page. And then there was a typical add to cart checkout purchase process, right? So when we look at this, what's important here, the reason that we don't really include the advertorial in this particular viewpoint is if we're having a preceding step from the sales page, it's really just a way to go through and change the ratios on the back of this. And so kind of what we're looking at is the site loading, and then ultimately that cost per add to cart. That's kind of where this breaks down from a numerical perspective. But as I looked at this, so we had ad clicks coming through. This company was awesome at making a bunch of different ads, testing stuff, unique things. So I had a pretty good understanding. They made a ton of sales on these particular creatives. I knew that my first thing I needed to focus on was not ads.
Yeah.
Landing page view, they had good tech. It loaded quickly, what have you. Sales content, and once again, the add to cart, the checkout, the purchase. This had been tested with tens of thousands of customers. Yeah. So to me, it was one of those things where I said, I don't want to come in here and start saying, I feel, here's my opinion on what should be changed, right? I wanted to come to the numbers and say, does anything here look wrong to me? Look out of place. Right. And so I just want to go through the progression rates here. So just as a refresher, this is the overall conversion rate for the funnel, right? So I'm going to put CVR here. 1.43, rough estimate of what this was at the time, right? But what a lot of people look at is how do we improve our conversion rates? But what they're missing is an understanding that your conversion rate is actually multiplying the progression rates at every step together.
Right.
Right? So the way you improve your overall conversion rate is by looking at each of these numbers individually. Yeah. And so I just kind of came through here and said, let's just talk about raw numbers. What looks like here? So our landing page view rate is 85% of people who clicked actually hit the sales page. Pretty good. This is kind of a minimum benchmark we shoot for. I like it to be 90% plus, but okay, don't think we have any huge issues here. Add to cart rate. I did not have a benchmark for this at the time. The add to cart rate on this particular funnel was phenomenal. I was sitting here saying, okay, this is roughly 1 out of 6 people. 1 out of 6 is 16%. So out of 6 people that clicked on the ad, 1 out of 6 of them is adding to cart to move forward in the checkout process. Felt reasonable to me, right?
Yeah.
Right. Checkout process is, okay, I have something in my cart, but I'm actually moving over to the billing section. So roughly 50% of those people move forward. That seemed to me, sometimes I put stuff in my cart and I don't move to checkout. So 50%, okay, so this is 45%, pretty good. Where I felt the first thing in my gut that said this feels problematic is that when we hit the credit card page, only about 1 out of 4 people was completing the purchase.
Okay.
So I think what was really important here is a couple things, and we'll talk about this when we get into the why and the how, but the volume on 1,000 clicks to get to checkout was pretty darn good, right? 57 out of 100, pretty good number of people getting to checkout, but that purchase step is killing you where you're like, man, there is a massive drop off here, and it's causing our CPAs, we were willing to afford $65 per sale, but when we're stuck at, 69.72, but we're seeing 3 out of 4 people who hit the credit card page not buy, it was to me one of those things where I was like, if we fix this, we're going to be able to we're going to be able to drastically improve our performance.
So most people's inclination here, and we have seen this, I don't know, a gazillion times. Most people's inclination here is going to be, okay, we're having a purchase rate issue. We need to change the price. That's almost always where people need to lower the price, right? People think it's too expensive. We need to lower the price. I was here for this. So I know that's not what happened, but let's talk about why that is not the right move for a second, because I think that is still a card that people want to pull out quickly that can absolutely be detrimental to your overall efforts. Like it could literally be like the silver bullet to your efforts in some cases, right? So let's talk about that for a second before moving on to the why and the how in this particular case.
Yeah, so I would say this is the first time we kind of leveraged our workshop process where we find, so when we talk about where, I'm just going to circle, this was our where. This was our problem, right? Coming to the team and saying, this is where we are seeing a conversion rate drop off that is making a really negative impact on our performance. what do we want to try? And as you pointed out, most people here go, well, if people have been all the way through and they're abandoning at this part, it's definitely about price, right?
Right.
And okay, that's one option. I never want to concede on price because being a business owner, you know that revenue is the lifeblood. And every time you lower your price, you are at the point now where you are... Yeah, you're sucking the lifeblood out of your company. In fact, I went through a sales process. I'm working on an education purchase. Guy tells me the price, and I go, can we do it as a 2-pay? And he's like, why? Why don't you just want to pay the whole thing? I'm like, cash flow, dude. Cash flow is everything, right?
Yeah.
It's not that I couldn't pay it all at once, right? But like, can we do it in 2 pieces? It's important to me. And so that's kind of that part for me of, I never want to step back on price if we can avoid it. And I thought the price of this thing was extremely reasonable. There was nothing
100%.
else out there on the market. Like it was an awesome product that had
the potential also to save you money, right? Like it had 100,000 customers, and it also was a product that kind of stood in between an original way, a disruptor kind of product that could also help you save money. So like when you really worked out what it could do for you if you purchased it, it was very reasonably priced.
Totally. And so I think what's important when we dig into this is there were too many positive things going for it for me to go, this is a pricing issue. Right. So I spent time with you and a couple other people saying, my why is, I remember going back and reading Facebook ad comments just to kind of like understand the sentiment around things. And once again, we were kind of in this time where there was a bunch of affiliate products and drop ship and people had really bad experiences. But the thing that kept popping up for me was the word scam. Typically when I see this, it's something where people go, it's too good to be true, or there's something that looks fishy. Right? And so this is one for me. I'm like, there's 100,000 customers. They have really good reviews.
Great ads.
What is it? What is it that's causing this thing to not perform as well as it should? And so this is, I'm just going to put here, this was the comment was scam. So my hypothesis was, and once again, we're talking like heyday, drop shipping, all of this stuff. People were just,
wild west. Yeah.
Making up stuff left and right. And so my hypothesis was third-party validation. We need someone with some sort of reputation that can say, this thing's legit. You should feel comfortable purchasing this thing.
Yeah, this product had a big affiliate arm to their business, and I hadn't even really connected the dots until you said it just now. But man, it's a wild time to think about how crazy affiliate used to be, because people were just giving up the reputations of their business to pretty much complete strangers to pretty much say whatever they wanted, right? So when you're dependent upon that affiliate business to drive volume for you, but you don't ultimately have like a total thumb stop on the messaging, it's kind of easy now to see how they got to this point, right? Because they were so dependent upon that affiliate traffic. So, okay, we've got to go build, this again alludes to trust signals, right? We've got to go get out from underneath the scam umbrella. We need to go find some third-party validation that this is a legitimate product, that it does what it says. It's not too good to be true. If I recall correctly, you went and did some digging through, what was it called? I don't even, Canto, whatever the hell we were using at the time, bunch of video files from the client or whatever, and you came across some news segments.
Yeah, so I think the first thing here is kind of talking about, when we're talking about third-party validation, so I guess we should start where you just talked about, was what already exists that we can quickly try, right?
Yeah.
I learned with the last project that the experiment was so long. It was like, what can we do right now to see if we can improve this, right? So sitting down, I come through, they'd been on 2 news segments, and I was like, these are really good. It's going and showcasing the product, the validity, their background story, the whole thing. Like, they did a really good job with these. Why aren't we using these? And I said, why don't we just not show them on one news segment? I'm literally just going to sit down with my own Camtasia, cut them in half and put them together.
Yeah.
And now we can have this like, okay, they've been featured in multiple places. It's a big deal. So
So you
one
decided
was,
to put, sorry, I was going
Go
to
ahead.
ask questions. Go ahead. No. I was going to say, so we've stitched together these videos. Okay, that checks the box of like quote unquote social proof, right? Or third party validation. But then you have to ask yourself, where does it go, right? Is this third party validation top of funnel? Is it running as an ad? Is it going to be on a landing page? How did you begin to, I guess, integrate this third party validation into the actual funnel?
Yeah. So we created this new segment VSL, and I think your question is exactly what it needs to be, is where should this be located? So once again, the reason we love working with clients who have existing traffic is if something's already working at some level, we can now do one of three things: adjust, add steps, or omit steps, right?
Yeah.
And so what was important about this one, whenever we're looking at adding a step, people think we're nuts when we want to add a step in their sales process.
Yeah.
But the important data point for me is there's tons of volume here and here. So this sales process is working pretty darn well. Volume's not our, if we're seeing like 12 add to carts.
Right. If volume was an issue, this would be a different discussion. But.
Right. But there was so much volume. My thing was, we're getting tons of people to the bat, at bat, but they're not high enough quality. And so this is where we would come in here and say, this is why I made this decision, is like, I'm okay reducing volume slightly if it means we can get our quality up. So what we did was we added a second page before the sales page.
Yep.
So it was advertorial 1, advertorial 2, and then we really just drove them to checkout. We kind of skipped the sales page. But we ran this test in a couple different ways. We added the social proof news VSL straight on the advertorial. My concern there was, I think this is going to get lost in the shuffle because there's so much content on this.
Yeah.
I'm not worried about the amount of volume getting through. I'm more worried about the quality. So let's reserve this as its own page, right? And so what we did was I said, let's keep the advertorial exactly the same. All I want to do is add a step between the advertorial and the sales page. It was this video, news segment VSL. And the reason for that is I wanted to ensure that it would get full attention because this was the primary concern of people. And so when we went and did this, we added this second page. And this was really just about, we want to execute this. We ran a split test. So the ads, some of them went to V1 with the other video. Yep.
Was it a fee? Yeah, I remember. I built this test.
Yeah. We just rotated it, right? And what was important for us is what's going to make a difference in this flow, what's really going to be important, right? And ultimately, we were able to produce some amazing results that helped remove this bottleneck. So anything else you want to cover before we move on?
No, I think it's important to, I'm having here kind of whispering in my ears, like it's really important to not just like, okay, you have the good idea, right? You have a good idea. We need to do this third party validation let's do it in video form. Okay, great. Like there has to be more nuanced thought sometimes than just slapping something in there, right? So it's like, it's one thing to get something made and to go and try it, but you need to make sure that you're really applying full thought to your strategy and not, because like this video executed on the advertorial, right? As part of the shuffle, like we could have done literally the exact same work for the most part and had drastically different results. But because we continued that thought down through the rest of the process, this is what drove, those really stellar results. So let's flip down to what happened. Again.
Yes. So I'm going to move a couple numbers down. So we had 14 versus 29, and we had 69. Oops, I cannot see green. I'm going to go away from that. So this was 69 versus 35, right? This was ultimately, sorry, I'll put 14 right here. And then for conversion rate, went from 1.43. So we literally doubled.
Literally, yeah.
Right? Yeah. That was where we started, and this is where we ended. And I think what's so important about this one is we'll kind of come down here to our three answers, but this was something that when you make a change in your funnel, If you just have one ad platform running, it's going to allow you to scale that. What was so impactful for this business is this change impacted all of their traffic, right?
Yeah, it became the control funnel. Yeah.
Facebook, YouTube, affiliate, all of the different things that were being run, everyone started going through this path. And, I did this in our next case study. I'll talk about how I did this as part of an internal team. Organic, email, social. When you make these improvements, this becomes so additive when you improve your funnel performance. This was truly game changing for them across the board. So obviously cutting your CPAs in half makes a massive difference. Right. But this is just real, true game changer by focusing on these different things.
Well, again, it's like, and ultimately, like to attribute such dollar values to a video that was literally like made in how many minutes, right? It's insane. Sometimes it's easy sometimes to talk yourself out of like the simple quote unquote solutions being the right solutions. But this is a great example of like, if it's backed by reason, if it's the math supports it, it doesn't have to be hard. Like something being simple doesn't necessarily make it easy, but it doesn't have to be hard necessarily either, right? So it's like when you can go and do the quick to impact change, a rising tide lifts all boats like that. And that's exactly what happened here, right? So this company got to really kind of put the pedal to the metal and continue to grow because of a video that you chopped together. It's amazing. It really is amazing when you think about it. So from a profitability perspective, they went to the moon with this. We went full blown volume.
Yeah. So let me just start here with a big old check mark, right?
Check mark. Yeah.
So when you go from $69 CPA to $35 CPA, you effectively are able to acquire double the number of customers for the same cost. And the margin, our max allowable was $30 or $65. So now you double the number of customers and we're making $30 more in margin multiplied by that double number of customers.
Didn't they give us a CPA increase at some point too? Like, didn't we also it made such a difference that we got like a $10 CPA increase or something like that?
Yes. So we got there, and we'll talk about that in a little bit when we're going through the diversification and scaling process. Yeah. But from a starting perspective, way more volume at way cheaper prices, right? Yeah. The question is, do you want to pocket this or do you want to roll it back into volume? And so they were absolutely on board with volume. Yeah. And just as a reminder here, going back to episode 1, the reason you have to make the decision on pocket the profit or pour it back into volume is as you increase spend, your CPAs are going to go back up, right?
No matter what.
No matter what you do. And anyone who tells you differently is...
doesn't know what they're talking about.
Doesn't been doing this long enough.
Yeah, exactly.
This is really important to understand that this is how this process works. And so when you create profitability wins, you have to make this decision. Yeah. For us, we don't really care if it's about. I was listening to something about the auto industry this morning, and they made the decision to move away from volume and focus on profitability. Cool. If that's what's most important to you, great. Yeah. Where if it's we're gonna make our living by having more volume and getting better pricing on our costs of goods and all of those things, that's cool too. This is ultimately the first thing you have to do is create room in the math so you can make that decision. Yep.
So room in the math, check. They decided to reinvest. We're scaling back up thousands of customers a day, I think at one point. I know at one point. Obviously, this level of conversion data has impact on machine learning and the algorithm. So let's pivot talking about the impact that had.
Yeah, so once again, I'm just going to rewrite these numbers here. Off the same 1,000 clicks, there was 29 customers versus 14.
It's insane.
And once again, we now had $30 in room in the math that we could afford to go scale. So this started at 29 with the same traffic costs. But we got to the point that, we're doing, let's say it's 100 customers. And I don't know that for sure, right? Where we got to, but when we're looking at this gap here is massive as far as what we were able to achieve. And so once again, our goal is to get to the spot where we have 50 conversions per ad set per day. And this was achieving that in droves. I remember so vividly, my wife and I used to go to church on Sunday mornings. And for forever before this test, we were doing like 40 or 50 sales a day. We're walking into church at 10 a.m. We already had done 90 sales.
Yeah.
And by the time I walked out, we were at 150 and it's 11:15 in the morning, right?
Yeah.
And so just something for me when looking at this of like, the conversion data here was massive. And just so you can understand the difference this make, when we started this process, I want to say we were spending like $5,000 to $6,000 a day.
Yeah.
We got up to spending $37,000 a day.
Yeah.
And it really was because of this. We were feeding so much information back to the ad platforms. They were now able, the machine learning was able to perform at such a high level that the its predictions was getting better and better and better as you got larger. Once again, CPAs continued to go up, but it could feed enough volume. And regardless of what people say about iOS 14, this is still how this works, right?
Yep.
I agree with you that what you can do now from scale on an ad network is less than what you could do then, but the machine still works the same way. It's really remarkable what's possible.
Yeah, and I think it's actually understanding it. I think oftentimes the algorithm or what machine learning, whatever you want to call it, it really gets like a negative connotation for just unfathomable reasons to me, because it's nothing more than like a conduit for information, right? Like you put stuff in, it gives you stuff back. You make learnings, you take the information. So it's like understanding it and like, making friends with the algorithm as opposed to vilifying it would probably be a huge piece of advice from me to anybody listening right now, is going to be learn to understand it and learn to the levers that you can pull to ultimately work with it, and stop vilifying the algorithm, because once you figure out how to kind of work in tandem with the machine learning aspect of things by creating, like you said, it can literally change your business. I'm going to get a t-shirt or something. I'm going to get a whole series of t-shirts made, one with like Zuckerberg's face, one with like I heart the algorithm. I don't know. I've got some ideas going. But okay, so obviously, again, this level of conversion data, this is my first job as a media buyer, right? So I am like I just remember, I look back on this time and I'm like scared to death because I am in control of like big budgets. I didn't know any. And like I just remember being like on edge, like, oh my God, don't mess anything up, don't do anything wrong, da 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 da. Thankfully, I had you there I used to have, fun fact, I don't know if I ever told you this. I used to have a sticky note on my computer, and all it said on it in giant letters was "slow down." And I think I still have that I know. I think I still have that sticky note somewhere. So algorithm, again, check. We're getting the 50 conversions a day. The machine learning is doing what it needs to do to allow us to compound our wins, to push farther, better, and faster. From a diversification standpoint, this had a big presence on YouTube and on Facebook. So platforms was definitely diverse. There's definitely platform diversification to talk about. There was also creative diversification to talk about. So let's kind of break out our messaging and platform diversification processes here.
Yeah, so I wrote down message and platform. I think what's really important is we move over here to our scaling diagram, and I'm actually going to move this so we can have a little bit of space here.
Freeform's pretty good once you learn how to use it. It's the learning how to use it part that's a little...
Yeah, it's pretty awesome. Okay, so when we look at this, right, let's say we got here and this is where we were stuck.
Yeah.
So our fix here was checkout.
Yeah.
Just, checkout purchase rate, right? So we fixed this, and what we did first was scaled spend. So we essentially had one really good ad that they'd had shot at that point that was performing well, and we had ramped that bad boy up, and we were doing way bigger volume, hitting our CPAs. And as you said, they were doing so much volume that their AOVs kept going up because now they were pushing hundreds of more people in. So we kept getting higher CPAs. So we were able to continue pushing the spend higher. But once again, we got to the point of diminishing returns. And so I think what's super important for me is no matter what you do, there will always come a point where the scale runs out in relation to your profitability goals. So you're going to run into the next plateau. So the next plateau, we got there, we scaled it up, had to pause. And typically, just so you know, the way that happens is you actually go a little bit above. You see your profitability is not where you want it to be, so you back down, right?
Yep.
We're here. We're in a plateau. So the next thing is, how do we get out of this plateau again? So the next one was, this was about messaging. So we were lucky to have a really awesome creative team at this place.
Yes.
That would make dozens of videos, getting products, shooting UGC, what have you. And so what you and I actually kind of worked on during this time frame is we talk, like, once again, the takeaway for me from this that we'll come back to is speed. How do we come up with tests that can help us make differences quickly? So a couple things that we did. Number one, we went and just cut up videos and started building what we call Frankenstein ads, which is something we do a ton now, which is we use David Fry's 12-step formula, and we just say, where can we find this? Someone talking about the problem. Cool, that's section 1. And then we can go through and mash together different video assets that help us ultimately determine that great sales message. This worked gangbusters because there was tons of video assets. So we shot new stuff. We went and Frankenstein a bunch of things. And so we were able to get really, really big because we had so many high performing assets coming through that were from different perspectives. And I think that's really important to me is when we talk about messaging, it wasn't the same ad cut up with 10 different intros, right? We kind of call that the V-Shred method. And I don't mean that to be negative towards the V-Shred. They're one of the most successful.
It's not derogatory. Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
But it's just like, that's what they kind of taught is, you know, do a couple different intros. They have the top thing and the bottom thing. And like, okay, cool. It works. And you can sometimes find winners, but it's not really changing, spreading out your messaging. And so that's that part for us.
It doesn't actually appeal to different people. Like that, I think that's what this boils down to is that the messaging diversification wasn't hook diversification. We weren't trying to find different ways to get the same person in. We were trying to find different ways to get different segments of people in. And both ways are valid. Both ways can work, right? Because sometimes your product is so niche that it really is only for one segment of people. And then the game is diversifying your message across that segment of people to make it win. But if you have like this product had broad appeal, right? So if you have a product with broad appeal, you don't have to really like the game isn't always we talk about iteration versus variation, right? Iteration being same message, word saladed up to be a different version versus a variation being something totally new. We took the variation route with this client. And
and what stuck out to me probably the most is that the initial ad was very heavily focused towards men.
Yes.
And one of our most successful ads in the long run was focused on women.
Yep.
And it was really cool to kind of see how it brought in different customers. And honestly, I think that's why we got a CPA bump is because I think when we brought in women, they were spending more. And so just one of those things of like being able to layer that, double the size of your audience, what have you, was a really big deal. So first thing, we scaled our spend. Then we improved messaging. We had more messages in the flow. So we got up to here. And then finally, we got to the point whether, you know, we really were focusing on YouTube. We also did this was really where we got to the point where it was about platforms, right? And so I'll even just write in here channels because this is so important. So like you and I ran YouTube and Facebook. We had a lot of messages running. We were running different campaigns. They were backing out. But on top of that, now we also were able to send stuff to other affiliates that could drive more traffic. Right. And once again, for me, I wish I knew more about Native at this point because Native was an awesome channel for this. And so that's, once again, we see this happen frequently. We find a funnel win. We're able to go scale what's currently working. Then we're focusing on messaging diversification, which gets us to the next level. And then it really becomes about migrating platforms, search, social, native, and display. That's kind of what our process is. But this is one of the first times where it was like we got to see this in a massive way. And I remember I got to see the founders of the Gadget company at an event. Yeah. And I'd never met these guys, and I was like, yeah, we you know, I'm sure they'll know who I am after talking. They're like, John Belcher, this was you, And that was just one for me where it was like, wow, we really made a huge impact on these people's company. It was super exciting. So
well, again, a testament to just not only like having a process, but following through on the process, right? Having faith in the process. Sometimes it's with this industry, it is so easy to get kind of like, I call it shiny objects syndrome. You know what I mean? Like, oh, new idea. Oh, new way to test things. Oh, it's so easy to like want to pivot your ideas. But I actually find it more challenging to just hold fast to what I know works, right? Because there is a line to be drawn there as far as, okay, I don't want to stop myself from learning new things. But also, like you said, when something works, it works, and to stick to it. So looking back on this case study, what really stands out aside from getting to know me for the first time?
Yeah, I think as we talk about this, this is the belief in the system that this can work. Once again, third vertical, still at this part where everyone's like, does this work for so-and-so? Does this work in this area? And the answer is yes, this once again works. Continued belief that sales message is crucial and identifying people's concerns. And then I think the third one, I mentioned this earlier, is speed of testing.
Yeah.
This was the time for me where it became really apparent where I'm like, I don't want to come in and be consultative and be like, okay, here's what we need to do, but this is going to take 6 months.
Right.
What's important for us and why we want to work with clients that already have traffic, not why we want to, it's why we only work with clients that already have traffic, is because we want to come in and make a difference, lickety split.
Yeah.
How do we put this stuff in and say, we can make a difference now? Mm-hmm. Because you need this from a profitability perspective. Mm-hmm. But then we can start getting into our longer tier process. And so something that we don't mention a lot, but we actually build scaling plans every month for our clients. And we go through and review creative, funnel, and platforms. And then from those, there's priorities in each area. And then what we build is an overall priority list, and it's put into 2 sections: quick wins and long term, right? Yeah. And so that's that part for us of big wins. Yeah, and that's what I learned about this in this particular scenario is speed to impact with clients is so important to show that we can make a difference. And what I love is we work on performance, so we can come in and show we can make a huge difference, and then we get to have a long-term relationship with our clients, which I love. So
yeah, I look back on this case study again. This is like literally the infancy of my career, so we're talking like the beginning for me. Just really the ability for a seemingly small thing like stitching together 2 videos to be a business changing decision, right? Like I said, my big takeaway from this is like, it's not always gigantic, grand 2-month long processes that can create these wins. Sometimes it really can be simple, and it's our job to let the simple fix be the simple fix, you know? Like I really look at this case of that, because it's like, if you say, oh, we cut people's CPAs in half by stitching together 2 news segments, they'd be like, what? You know, it sounds too good. It literally sounds too good to be true, but it doesn't have to be hard, right? So again, another huge win, another great case study. I believe, Mr. Belcher, this is a good place to put the pin in this one. We're talking Ecomm in the next as well, but a little higher ticket price and in the health space, correct?
yeah, it's the same where problem, but the why and how changed. The only thing that I would add in closing to this is what Sammy just talked about is the answers to your problem are in your math. Yep. And a lot of times the solutions in the how process you already have. It's really just getting someone who can help you decipher all of that information to put together an action plan. And that's why we call the business Deciphered, is like, we want to help you see the forest through the trees to figure out how we make things more profitable. So
guys, if you want to hear us talk about it again, a little bit different again, but also the same, we'll see you guys in the next episode. Come join us.
Thanks.
Bye. See ya. Thank you so much for watching The Scaling Game. John and I know that time is your most valuable currency, so we do not take your attention lightly. If you could do us a solid and drop a comment below, letting us know what you loved, what you hated, whatever it is, leave the comment so that we can read that comment and then go and use it to inform our future content. We appreciate that as well. If you have interest in working with the team at Deciphered, you can head on over to deciphered.com. That's Deciphered with a Y. Fill out the lead form, and then we will reach out to you to schedule a feasibility assessment. Outside of that, guys, that's all I have for you today. I hope you enjoyed this episode, and I will see you in the next one.